The message from the stars. The year was 20289, and humanity had finally stopped being alone in the universe. For over 300 years, humans had spread across 42 star systems, building colonies on distant worlds and establishing trade routes through the darkness of space. Earth remained the center of human civilization, but humanity had grown far beyond its birthplace. The Stellar Alliance governed all human territories with wisdom and patience, always hoping that someday they would meet others among the stars. That day came without warning. A massive vessel appeared at the edge of human space, near the colony world of Meridian Prime. The ship was enormous, larger than any human station ever built. Its hull was dark purple and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with an eerie green light. The ship did not approach immediately. Instead, it remained at the system's edge for 7 days, watching and waiting. Human patrol ships surrounded the alien vessel at a respectful distance. They sent greeting messages in every language and mathematical sequence they could think of. For 6 days, there was only silence. Then, on the 7th day, the alien ship responded. The message was simple but profound. It contained coordinates, a time, and a single word translated into human language. The word was talk. The Stellar Alliance moved quickly. They selected Captain Alina Voss to lead the first contact mission. Alina was 58 years old and had spent 4 decades in diplomatic service. She had negotiated peace between warring human colonies and had brought together different cultures under a single banner of cooperation. Her silver hair and calm eyes had become symbols of hope across human space. She believed deeply that all intelligent beings could find common ground if they tried hard enough. Elena accepted the mission with a mixture of excitement and caution. She assembled a team of 25 people, including scientists, linguists, cultural specialists, and security personnel. Among them was Dr. Marcus Chen, a xenobiologist who had dreamed of meeting aliens since childhood. There was also Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, a young security officer who saw protecting the mission as the honor of her lifetime. Each member of the team understood they were about to make history. The diplomatic ship was named the Prometheus. It was designed for peace, not war. The ship carried no weapons except basic defensive systems. This decision was deliberate. Alina wanted to show that humanity approached this meeting with open hands and open hearts. The Prometheus carried gifts representing human culture, including music, art, literature, and samples of Earth's biodiversity. Alana hoped these offerings would help build a bridge between 2 very different civilizations. The journey to the meeting coordinates took 18 days. During that time, Elena prepared her team thoroughly. They studied every piece of data collected about the alien vessel. They practiced greeting protocols and learned about different communication methods. Alina held daily meetings where she reminded everyone of their mission's importance. They were not just representing their nations or colonies. They represented the entire human species. When the Prometheus finally arrived at the coordinates, they found the alien ship waiting for them. It was even more impressive up close. The vessel dwarfed the Prometheus by a factor of 10. As they approached, A hangar bay opened in the alien ship's side, revealing a space large enough to hold 3 human ships. Elena gave the order to dock. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. This was the moment that would change everything. The aliens who greeted them were unlike anything humans had imagined. They called themselves the Kethrans. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies that seemed to be covered in dark scales. Their faces were angular, with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. 2 powerful arms ended in 6 fingered hands, and they moved with a grace that seemed impossible for beings of their size. They wore elaborate armor, decorated with symbols that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The leader of the Kethran delegation identified himself as Overseer Draxon. He spoke through a translation device that turned his deep, rumbling voice into something humans could understand. His tone was formal and cold. He explained that the Kethran Dominion ruled 70, 8-star systems, and had existed for over 12,000 years. They had encountered many species in their long history. Some became part of the Dominion willingly. Others were absorbed by force. He did not explain which category humanity might fall into. Alana responded with warmth and diplomacy. She spoke about humanity's history, from their single-world origins to their expansion across the stars. She talked about human values like cooperation, creativity, and the pursuit of knowledge. She expressed humanity's hope that they could learn from the Kethrans and share what humans had learned. She offered friendship and partnership between equals. Draxon's 3 eyes studied her without blinking. When she finished, he made a gesture that the translation device could not interpret. He said that the Dominion would consider humanity's words. Negotiations would begin the following day. He assigned them quarters within the alien ship and provided them with food synthesized to human nutritional needs. Then, he left without another word. The human team spent that night in their assigned quarters, which were spacious but strange. The walls seemed to pulse with faint light, and the air had an unusual metallic taste. Alina gathered her team for a private discussion. Most of them were excited but nervous. Dr. Chen was fascinated by everything he had seen. Lieutenant Morrison was worried about the lack of visible security protocols. Alina listened to all their concerns and encouraged them to remain open-minded. Negotiations began the next morning in a massive chamber at the heart of the alien ship. The room was circular with a high ceiling that displayed what appeared to be a map of the galaxy. Stars glowed and pulsed above them in patterns that seemed meaningful but incomprehensible. The Kethran delegation included 12 members, each one larger and more imposing than the last. They sat on elevated platforms that forced the humans to look up at them. Alina noticed this detail, but said nothing. She had learned long ago that sometimes you must accept small disadvantages to gain larger victories. She opened the discussions by proposing basic frameworks for trade and communication. She suggested establishing embassies in each other's territories. She spoke about the mutual benefits of sharing scientific knowledge and cultural exchanges. The Kethrans listened in silence. When Alina finished, Overseer Draxon responded with a list of demands. The Dominion wanted access to specific human technologies, including faster then light drive systems and artificial intelligence protocols. They wanted human colonies to acknowledge Dominion authority in their region of space. They wanted humanity to provide regular tribute, in the form of resources and manufactured goods. Elena kept her face neutral as she listened. These were not proposals between equals. These were demands from a superior to an inferior. She responded carefully, explaining that humanity could not accept such terms. She proposed compromises and alternatives. She appealed to the concept of mutual respect and fair exchange. She worked for hours trying to find middle ground. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. Elena made slow progress on minor points, but could not move the Kethrans on major issues. They viewed other species as either subjects or threats. The concept of genuine partnership seemed foreign to them. During breaks, Elena sent regular reports back to Earth. She remained hopeful that patience and persistence would eventually create understanding. Dr. Chen spent his free time studying Kethran technology and culture. He noticed that everything in their society was organized by rigid hierarchy. The strong commanded and the weak obeyed. They had no concept of democracy or consensus. Their entire civilization was built on dominance and submission. He shared these observations with Elena, who grew more concerned about reaching any meaningful agreement. Lieutenant Morrison grew increasingly uneasy as the weeks passed. She noticed that Kethran security forces always watched the human delegation. She observed that certain areas of the ship were absolutely forbidden to humans. She reported seeing what looked like prison cells filled with beings who were clearly not Kethran. When she mentioned this to Elena, the captain told her to focus on protecting the team and not make assumptions about things they did not fully understand. The breakthrough Elena hoped for never came. Instead, everything fell apart during a formal dinner on the 21st day. The Kethrans had invited the human delegation to a ceremonial meal, meant to honor their negotiations. Elena saw this as a positive sign and encouraged her team to participate enthusiastically. The dinner was held in a grand hall, decorated with trophies and banners from the Dominion's many conquests. During the meal, Dr. Chen tried to compliment the Kethran cuisine. He used a phrase he had learned from their translation database, intending to say that the food was worthy of celebration. However, he made a small grammatical error. What he actually said translated to an ancient Kethran insult that mocked their ancestors as weak and cowardly. The entire hall went silent. Every Kethran present turned to stare at Dr. Chen with their 3 eyes blazing with anger. The doctor realized immediately that he had made a terrible mistake. Elena stood up quickly and apologized in the formal Kethran manner. She explained that it was an error of language, not an intentional insult. She bowed her head in the gesture of respect that she had learned. She asked for understanding and forgiveness. For a moment, it seemed like the crisis might pass. Then Overseer Draxon stood from his elevated position. He was 12 feet tall, and his shadow fell across the entire human delegation. He declared that humanity had revealed its true nature. He said they were treacherous and dishonorable. He announced that the diplomatic mission was over, and that the humans would be dealt with according to Dominion law. Catherine's soldiers entered the hall from every entrance. They carried weapons that glowed with contained energy. Elena ordered her team to remain calm. Lieutenant Morrison and her security officers moved to protect the delegation, but they were unarmed. According to the terms of the diplomatic agreement, they could only stand between their people and the alien soldiers. One security officer named Jackson stepped forward with his hands raised. He spoke clearly and firmly, asking the Catherines to stop and reconsider. He explained that diplomatic immunity protected them under laws that civilized species had followed for thousands of years. He begged them to resolve this peacefully. An energy bolt struck him in the chest. He fell without making a sound. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. Then chaos erupted. The Catherine soldiers opened fire on the unarmed humans. People Elena had known for years fell around her. Dr. Chen died trying to shield a younger colleague. Lieutenant Morrison fought with her bare hands until 3 soldiers shot her down. Screams echoed through the hall as the massacre continued. Elena did not run. She stood in the center of the chaos and raised her voice above the violence. She called for peace, even as her people died. She invoked the sacred laws of diplomacy that every space faring civilization was supposed to honor. Her voice never wavered even as blood pooled at her feet. The price of peace. Overseer Draxon walked toward Elena slowly, while his soldiers ceased fire. The hall became quiet except for the moans of the dying. 4 of Elena's 5 team members were already dead. She stood alone, surrounded by bodies, facing the massive alien commander. Blood stained her diplomatic uniform, but her eyes remained clear and focused. Draxon looked down at her, with what might have been curiosity. His translation device clicked as he spoke. You stand in defiance even now. Your species has courage. I will admit that much. But courage without power is meaningless. Elena met his gaze without flinching. You have made a catastrophic error. Killing diplomats is an act of war. Do you understand what you have unleashed? The overseer made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. We have studied your species for many cycles. We know exactly what you will do. You will mourn your dead. You will hold ceremonies and make speeches. You will send messages demanding justice. And then, you will accept what has happened, because you have no other choice. He gestured at the bodies around them. You spread across the stars with no real military force. You build science stations and trade posts, but neglect warships. You speak of peace and cooperation, while stronger species sharpen their claws. You are prey pretending to be predators. Elena shook her head slowly. You do not understand us at all. Humanity has fought wars that would horrify you. We have killed each other over ideas and resources and pride. We chose peace because we learned the cost of war. But we never forgot how to fight. We never lost the ability to become what we needed to be. Draxon drew a ceremonial blade from his armor. It was 3 feet long and carved from some dark crystal that seemed to drink in the light. This is what power looks like. This is the only truth that matters in the galaxy. The strong survive and the weak are forgotten. Elena did not step back from the blade. She looked at it, and then looked directly into Draxon's 3 eyes. You think you are strong. You think you understand power. But you have just made an enemy of a species that has conquered its own world 3 times over. A species that split the atom before it left its home planet. A species that has never surrendered to any foe. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You have killed me and my team. You have murdered ambassadors who came in peace. When word of this reaches Earth, something will awaken that has been sleeping for centuries. And when humanity comes for you with fire and fury, you will understand too late what true power really means. Draxon drove the blade through her heart. Alina gasped, but remained standing for a moment longer. Her eyes stayed open and fixed on her killer's face. Then she fell to the floor, among her murdered colleagues. Captain Alina Voss, the finest diplomat humanity had ever produced, died believing that her death would bring vengeance. The Kethrans had recorded everything. They had cameras throughout their ship capturing every moment of the negotiations and the massacre. Draxon ordered the recordings to be compiled and sent to the Stellar Alliance headquarters on Earth. He wanted humanity to see what had happened to their diplomatic mission. He wanted them to feel fear and helplessness. He wanted them to understand their place in the Dominion's hierarchy. The transmission reached Earth 6 hours later. It arrived at 17 in the morning, Earth Standard Time. Chancellor David Torres of the Stellar Alliance was awakened by his emergency staff. They showed him to a secure briefing room, where the recording was ready to play. He sat alone in the darkness and watched the entire horrific sequence. He watched Alina try to save her people. He watched her face death with extraordinary dignity. He watched her fall. When the recording ended, Torres sat in silence for 15 minutes. Then he stood and walked to his communications console. He ordered an immediate emergency session of the Stellar Council. He declared a code black situation, the highest level of threat humanity recognized. He authorized the mobilization of all military reserves. And then he watched the recording again, memorizing every detail. News of the massacre spread across human space within hours. The recordings appeared on every screen in every colony. 3 billion people watched Alina Voss die. They watched unarmed humans gunned down, while begging for mercy. They watched an alien commander commit an act that violated every law of civilized behavior. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. On Earth, millions of people filled the streets. There were no protests or debates. There was only a single unified demand for justice and revenge. In the lunar colonies, workers abandoned their stations and lined up at military recruitment centers. On Mars, the entire planetary government voted unanimously for war before the Council could even convene. Throughout the outer systems, human fleets that had patrolled for decades against pirates suddenly had a real enemy to fight. The Stellar Council met in an emergency session that lasted 18 hours. Representatives from every human territory participated, either in person or via quantum link. Some called for measured responses and careful planning. Others demanded immediate action regardless of cost. The debates were fierce and passionate. The recordings of Elena's death played repeatedly on screens throughout the chamber. Chancellor Torres listened to every voice. He understood the arguments for caution. The Kethran Dominion was ancient and powerful. They controlled nearly 80 star systems and possessed technology humanity did not fully understand. A war with them could be devastating. Millions might die. Human civilization itself could be threatened. These were legitimate concerns that could not be ignored. But Torres also understood something else. He understood that failing to respond would invite further attacks. He understood that humanity's honor and safety were at stake. He understood that every human in the galaxy needed to see their government would protect them and avenge them when necessary. Most importantly, he understood what Alina had tried to tell Draxon with her final words. When the debates finally exhausted themselves, Torres stood and walked to the central podium. The chamber fell silent as he prepared to speak. His voice was steady, but carried an edge that made everyone listen carefully. I have watched Captain Voss die more times than I can count. Each time I see the same qualities: courage in the face of death, dignity in impossible circumstances, faith that her sacrifice would matter. She represented the best of humanity. She went into the darkness believing in peace and cooperation. She died knowing that her death would unite us. He paused and looked around the chamber, at the faces of humanity's leaders. The Kethrans believe they know us. They believe we are weak because we value peace. They believe we will mourn and then submit. They have studied our culture and our history and drawn the wrong conclusions. They have forgotten one crucial fact about humanity. His voice grew stronger and harder. We did not reach the stars by being weak. We did not survive ice ages, plagues, world wars, and environmental collapse by being timid. We did not unite our own species after centuries of conflict by lacking will. We chose peace because we are strong enough to choose it, not because we cannot choose war. The Kethrans have violated laws that every civilized species holds sacred. They have murdered diplomats who came in peace. They have shown us exactly who they are and what they think of us. I say we believe them. I say we show them who we really are. I say we make them regret ever sending that first message. The vote was unanimous. Every single representative voted for war. For the first time in 70 years, humanity was united against a common enemy. The Stellar Alliance formally declared war on the Kethran Dominion at 203 47 Earth Standard Time, exactly 3 hours after Alina Voss was murdered. The response was immediate and total. Military recruitment centers were overwhelmed within hours. Young men and women lined up by the millions to enlist. They came from every world and every background. Some were motivated by patriotism, others by rage, and still others by a desire to be part of something historic. The military had to turn away applicants because training facilities could not handle the influx. Civilian industry transformed overnight. Factories that built consumer goods retooled to produce weapons and ammunition. Shipyards that constructed cargo vessels began assembling warships. Mining operations increased output by 300% to provide raw materials. The entire human economy shifted to a war footing in less than a month. Scientists and engineers who had spent careers on peaceful research turned their considerable talents to weapons development. They worked 20-hour days creating new technologies, specifically designed to counter Kethran advantages. energy weapons that could penetrate their advanced armor, shields that could withstand their plasma bombardment, faster engines that could outmaneuver their larger ships. New tactics emerged from military think tanks that studied every second of footage from Kethran vessels. The Kethrans watched these preparations with growing confusion. They had expected humanity to fragment and collapse into political chaos. Instead, humans were organizing with terrifying efficiency. Draxon received intelligence reports about human mobilization and dismissed them as exaggeration. He believed humans were putting on a show of force to negotiate better terms. He thought they would eventually accept Dominion authority once they realized the impossibility of real resistance. 6 months after Alina's death, reality arrived. A human fleet of 400 warships crossed into Kethran space without warning or declaration. They moved in perfect formation toward a major Kethran military station called Outpost Zeta. At the head of the fleet was a massive new battleship called the Alina's Vengeance. It was the most powerful warship humanity had ever constructed, armed with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. The fleet struck Outpost Zeta with focused fury. The battle lasted 90 minutes. Human ships attacked with tactics the Kethrans had never encountered. They accepted casualties that seemed suicidal, but kept pressing forward. Wave after wave of fighters overwhelmed Kethran defenses. Missiles and energy beams poured into the station from every angle. When Kethran reinforcements arrived, they found human ships waiting in ambush. The station fell. 4,000 Kethran soldiers died. Human forces did not accept surrenders or take prisoners. When the battle ended, they broadcast a message across all Kethran communication channels. The message was simple and direct. You killed our diplomat. Now we kill you. This is only the beginning. The war that followed would rage for years, across dozens of star systems. It would be brutal and costly for both sides. But from that first battle, the Kethrans understood. They had made a terrible miscalculation. They had not attacked a weak and divided species. They had awakened something that had been sleeping. They had turned humanity from peaceful explorers into focused destroyers. And the fire of human rage would burn across the stars until the Kethran Dominion learned the true price of murdering those who came in peace. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.